Welcome to Cozy Gaming Bliss, my dear friends. In this podcast, we explore the ancient world and its timeless wisdom. Today, we're embarking on a monumental journey, delving into the depths of the Old Testament, also known as the Hebrew Bible or Tanakh. It's a living tapestry of stories, laws, prophecies, and poems that have shaped civilizations for millennia. The Old Testament is vast, so let's start by understanding its structure. It's comprised of three main sections. First, we have the Torah, or the Law, often called the Pentateuch. This includes the first 5 books, traditionally attributed to Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Genesis is where it all begins. Here we have the foundational stories: the breathtaking creation of the world, the fall of Adam and Eve, the devastating flood, and the building of the Tower of Babel. We also meet the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose journeys form the bedrock of Israel's identity. And let's not forget the captivating tale of Joseph in Egypt. Next, Exodus narrates the dramatic story of the Israelites' enslavement in Egypt, their miraculous escape led by Moses, the parting of the Red Sea, and the profound moment when God gives the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai. Leviticus then outlines the complex laws and regulations concerning sacrifice, the priesthood, holiness, and ritual practices, defining how the Israelites were to live in relation to God. Numbers details the census of the Israelite tribes and their arduous 40-year wanderings in the wilderness. And finally, Deuteronomy serves as Moses' powerful final speeches, reiterating the law and preparing the people for their entry into the Promised Land. Moving on, we have the Nevi'im, or the prophets, divided into 2 parts: the former prophets and the latter prophets. The former prophets are historical narratives telling Israel's story. Joshua recounts the conquest of Canaan. Judges explores the cycles of sin, oppression, repentance, and deliverance. 1 and 2 Samuel mark the rise of the monarchy, featuring Samuel, Saul, and the legendary King David. And lastly, 1 and 2 Kings charts the rise and fall of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Then, there are the latter prophets, offering profound prophetic messages. These are divided into the major prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, and the minor prophets, including Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. These prophets acted as God's messengers, calling Israel to faithfulness and often warning of judgment. Finally, we come to the Ketuvim, or the writings. This section is a diverse mix of poetry, wisdom literature, and historical narratives. Here, we find the timeless wisdom of Psalms, a collection of prayers, hymns, and poems that touch the heart. We also find the practical advice of Proverbs, exploring the big questions of life and job, the intimate love poetry of Song of Solomon, the story of loyalty in Ruth, and the lament over loss in Lamentations. Then we have the philosophical reflections of Ecclesiastes, the courageous story of Esther, the prophetic visions and narratives of Daniel, and finally, the historical accounts of Ezra and Nehemiah, and the retelling of history in 1 and 2 Chronicles. Now that we understand the structure, let's look at some of the key themes that run through the entire Old Testament. Monotheism, the bedrock of the Hebrew Bible, the belief in one God, YHWH. This sets Israel apart from its polytheistic neighbors. Covenant, a sacred agreement between God and Israel, initiated with Abraham and solidified at Sinai. This covenant carries both blessings and obligations. Law, Torah, God's instructions for righteous living, encompassing moral, ritual, and civil laws. Sin and repentance, the ever-present human tendency to disobey God and the vital importance of turning back to Him. Justice and righteousness. God's demand for fairness and compassion, especially towards the vulnerable and oppressed. Chosen people. Israel's selection by God, carrying a unique purpose and responsibility. The Promised Land, the land of Canaan, symbolizing God's provision and blessing. Messianic hope, the anticipation of a future leader who will restore Israel and establish God's kingdom. Exile and return, the cataclysmic Babylonian exile and the eventual return, demonstrating God's judgment and ultimate restoration. These themes are interwoven within the incredible stories we find throughout the Old Testament. We've already touched on some, but think about the dramatic escape from Egypt in Exodus, the battles for the Promised Land in Joshua, the reigns of kings like David and Solomon, and the powerful prophetic messages of Isaiah and Jeremiah. We also have stories of faith and loyalty, like the beautiful tale of Ruth, and of courage and deliverance in Esther. And let's not forget the fascinating, sometimes mysterious, stories of prophets like Elijah, Elisha, Ezekiel, and Daniel. The Old Testament is much more than a collection of ancient tales. It serves as the foundation of Jewish faith, providing the context and background for the New Testament and the life of Jesus. Its literary impact is profound, influencing Western culture, literature, and art. Most importantly, it provides timeless guidance on moral and ethical principles, shaping our understanding of the relationship between humanity and God. So as we conclude this exploration, remember the Old Testament is an incredibly rich and complex tapestry. It's a journey through history, faith, and the human condition, offering insights and inspiration that continue to resonate today. Please subscribe to my channel and like and share the video. Thank you, my dear friends.